Good afternoon. My name is John Kelsey, and today I thought I would talk a little bit about the IELTS exam itself. I wanted to relieve some of the nervousness that you sometimes feel when you take the IELTS exam. So I want to talk a little bit about the test and some of the procedures involved with the test. When the test begins, the examiner will come out and bring you into the exam room. When he brings you out to into the exam room, he will let you know that the test is being recorded, and then he will have you sit in a chair, and then he will come in. The examiner will always read information, personal information about you, about the examiner, to get the test started. So he will tell you about the test being recorded, and then he will read out the information. In this time, it's not really a time for you to speak. It's just a time for you to relax, listen to the examiner, and he will talk about your name. He will talk about your ID for the test. After that, the examiner will ask you for your identification. He will check your identification, confirm that you are the person that is taking the exam. Right after he finishes gathering all of your information, he will begin the test. He will tell you that the test is going to begin. The first part of the test will be questions about yourself. So there will be questions about what you do, whether or not you work or you're a student, and then there'll be some questions about your home, your hometown, things of that nature. All of these questions are personal questions related to yourself. So again, these are not difficult questions. You should know all the answers to the questions. So it's a fairly easy part. Once you finish basically introducing yourself to the examiner, you will move into some topics that are everyday topics. Maybe some questions related to transportation, transport in your city, maybe some education questions, music questions, reading questions, things that you'll be familiar with, things that you do every day. Maybe things related to your daily routine, things like that. So during this part of the test, you'll have a lot of yes and no questions. You'll have some opinion questions, as well as maybe some preference questions. In this part of the test, you always want to make sure that you're giving a reason why. So you should always have a because in your language. So there should be some reason why you do the things that you're talking about. If you don't answer those questions like that and the examiner wants you to talk a little more, he will say why or why not. So be ready to have those answers. This is a way for the examiner to have you extend your ideas. So if you just say yes or no, or yes, I like that, or no, I don't like that, you need to remember that you're going to have to give more information. After the examiner goes through part one, you will move on to what's called the individual long turn, or this is the time for you to talk about a specific topic. The examiner will introduce the topic. He will hand over a test booklet for you to read. Now, just so you know, this is the only part of the test where you can read the information. So when he hands you the test booklet, this is when you have an opportunity to make some notes preparing yourself for the topic. That means you will have 1 minute, which the examiner will tell you, to prepare your topic. Also in this time, the examiner will tell you that you have 1 to 2 minutes to speak. I want you to understand that it's not really 1 minute. It's usually a full 2 minutes. So make sure when you're practicing to talk for 2 minutes. In part 2, It's 4 questions that you'll have to answer. Again, these will be topics that you know about and that you can discuss. Again, it might be something related to music, reading, writing, anything along those lines. Transport, your idea about some things about you personally. Again, this is a personal part of the test. So it's all going to be about you. Make sure you prepare yourself to speak for 2 minutes. At the end of that time, the examiner will tell you when your topic is finished. In other words, he will say thank you. At this time, this is when you're getting ready to move to part 3. So there are transition questions that the examiner could ask you. Possibly 1 or 2 questions. Now, in this part, this is just a transition to part 3. So again, this is not a long answer. This is basically a yes or no answer, a very short answer. Again, if the examiner stops you when you're giving your answer, don't feel bad or don't feel like you did something wrong. This just means that the examiner has heard enough because you've already talked about this topic for 2 minutes. It's just a way to move on to part 3. Now, also, if the examiner does not ask you a follow-up question, 2 things could have happened. Number 1, you could have already answered the questions that the examiner was about to ask you, or you may have been off topic. So be careful that you make sure you follow your part 2 talk, looking at the tense, looking at the question itself, and make sure that you stay on topic. Now, after that transitional period, you'll move into part 3. In part 3, this is more of a general part of the test. In other words, these are called abstract questions. In other words, it's not about you personally, it's about in general. Maybe your opinion about people in general, maybe about an idea in general. So it's not about you. So make sure when you're talking about this topic, it's what you think about something. So this is part 3. So there'll be abstract questions, like I said, more general questions. This is the part where you need to really stretch your vocabulary and speak longer. In part 1, you should have had 1 or 2 sentences to talk about. Part 2 is all about you individually. Well, part 3, you can stretch your vocabulary a little bit more. In other words, talk a little bit more about the topic, giving some of your ideas and your opinions and a little bit of your feedback in part 3. Again, part 3 is also related to part 2, so it's going to be in general related to what you've already discussed. It's going to be more on a broader or more of a general scale when you get to part 3. Now, about the test itself, part 1 is anywhere from 4 to 5 minutes. Part 2 is 3 to 4 minutes. And part 3 is 4 to 5 minutes as well. So your total test time is 11 to 14 minutes. Now, 11 to 14 minutes is going to be your time. So you could be closer to 11 or 12 minutes if your answers are shorter, or you'll be closer to 14 minutes. Usually the examiner is going to try to get you to go closer to that 14 minutes. So I hope this lets you relax a little bit and gives you a better idea of how you can plan to take the IELTS exam. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you again for some more tips, techniques about the IELTS speaking exam. Thank you.